This week, I don't have a funny line. We're at the end of the season, and I just watched the finale. Madam Web just straight up sucks. This is the Superhero Pantheon. Now on this podcast, we will take 3 episodes of the Fox Kids version of Spider-Man that aired in the mid-90s and discuss / review. This is not for Pantheon eligibility, but it is a fun year-long side project at this point. My name is Jerome Cuson. You can find me on Twitter at JeromeC1985. You can find additional episodes of this podcast through Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast apps through the real world. We strongly encourage you to leave a 4 or 5-star review so as to help people discover this show and the great work that the folks at The Real World are doing. If you would like to interact with us or send feedback, you can do so by following us on Twitter at Hero Pantheon. My co-host for this week and every week is, of course, Brian DeBrain. He can be found on Twitter at Brian DeBrain. Brian, this week we are going to be discussing the penultimate episode as well as the finale of Season 3. And I have to start by talking about episode 13, Goblin War. If you had told me we were going to get 2 hours of Hobgoblin and Green Goblin shouting at each other with those voices, I would have told you to please don't make me do 2 hours of it. I'll say this, at 22 minutes, it was kind of pushing it. The voices, Brian, it was really grating on me.
Yeah, I think we had one too many goblins. As Baron Mordo would say in Doctor Strange 1, There's too many wizards and warlords out there. There's too many wizards and sorcerers out there. There's too many goblins out there, people, because I feel like it's diminishing returns right now, because as great as the episode is, it feels like there's just too many different goblins. Like, it's just, I know it's only 2, but it just feels like too much. Like, if we would have just had one goblin, it was just Green Goblin, then I think this would have worked much better. But because we're jumping back and forth and we're trying to figure out who's the other goblin and like which voice is who and who's identifying as whose voice and that kind of thing when you don't show the goblin on camera. So it's just it was kind of like it's a little too much for me. But like I said, I don't think they should have had those original Goblin episodes to begin with Hobgoblin, and just wait for Green Goblin, because now you have too many goblins and we're saying the word goblin way too many times, and like it's just like so much. But I get it, and I get the twists and the turns of it all and what it was building up to. So in that context, it was good. Again, more stuff with the Kingpin, with the Goblin. So, it's more of the same a little bit, but it's building towards that big ending at the last episode.
So I think the issue is that not only are you doing all of this stuff with the Green Goblin and the struggle with Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, trying to figure out who the Hobgoblin is. Like, I think that's a huge part of the tension in this episode. But I think the other issue is that you also have a lot of relationship stuff with Mary Jane and Peter Parker as well. So you've also got that going on. So I think there's a lot going on. I think this is still my favorite episode of the season, just because it really does feel like a lot of the themes and a lot of the things that they've done have really paid off. And I think I like the idea of the goblins going at it kind of more than, the voices are really the only part that bothered me, just because it's kind of annoying. But I think in theory, I really did like the idea of it more so than anything else. And at the beginning of the episode, Brian, I want to spin off with Lenny. That's all I want. I want Lenny in the MCU or in the Spider-Man universe or whatever, just finding random objects, taking them to the pawn shop, and destroying pawn shops across New York City. That's all I want.
Jesus, that beginning was just so like it felt like an MCU movie type opening where it's just like some random event instigate these other series of events. But man, it's just like it's just I feel like there should have been like a sweep or like some kind of like search because like obviously that was a huge oversight to have that piece of machinery just laying around for them to find after that whole debacle with Spot and all the remnants of the technology left behind and all that kind of thing. This is where I would think that crew that comes up and cleans up after the Avengers and the Battle of New York, they should have had something like that because they need something like that, obviously. Because clearly you cannot have technology like that just sitting around on the street for this old man to be picking up and then taking to pawn shops and destroying things. Because it was hilarious, but at the same time, it was just kind of like this seems so irresponsible. But then some of the things I've seen in my lifetime, especially working at a hotel, I don't know, man. Crazy things have happened, I guess.
So Mary Jane flashes back to all the various times that she's been kidnapped and had to deal with some crap, basically. That includes Dormammu at the beginning of the season, everything that happened with Venom back in season 1, Hydro Man as well. She flat out says it's dangerous to be around her. I love the fact that both Felicia and Mary Jane are basically saying that they're bad luck.
I know it's so fucked up, but
Mary Jane doesn't call herself Black Cat, so she doesn't get to be a superhero.
Yeah, that's true, but it just feels it's so tragic, and I feel so bad for them because what other logical conclusion can they think of other than blaming themselves? Because they still haven't put together that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Once they figure that out, they'll realize it's not them, it's Peter. But because of that, they can't figure out what the actual problem is, so they blame themselves, which is very, very sad. But that's kind of one of those. That's probably one of those real life things that people go through, where like they feel like they're to blame when it's really someone else, and that situation. Maybe we've all been there, but it's very relatable. So I really dig that. So it made Mary Jane really sympathetic in this episode, and yeah, I get it, man. It's really it sucks, but I mean to have that kind of feeling like it's all your fault, it's really a downer.
So here's the thing. This is the part of the episode that I have a lot of questions about. Peter says that him being Spider-Man is the problem. There is nothing to suggest the Dormammu situation happened independently of Spider-Man. Now, Venom did connect himself to Spider-Man, but again, that was more Eddie Brock being a creep to Mary Jane in general. Hydro Man was clearly an ex of Mary Jane, so he was going to be a problem regardless of whether Spider-Man is there or not. So my thesis to you, Brian and Brain, is that these problems are in fact not Spider-Man's fault. Mary Jane's problems are independent of his being Spider-Man, and that at this point, Peter Parker and Spider-Man not being revealed as being the same person to her is actually more irresponsible than her not knowing. That is my argument at this point. And I'm going to keep coming back to this as we discuss this episode and the next one. But I actually think Peter's being irresponsible now.
Yeah, it's maybe it's 50-50. I don't know, man, because it's so like the way they write this is like Mary Jane just has bad luck on top of the fact that Peter Parker also has bad luck. And then they add on the fact that Felicia Hardy has bad luck as well. So it's just all this bad luck coming together. So I guess everyone just has bad luck and everyone's just kind of like, well, do I blame myself? Do I blame him? And then by the end of it all, it's just like, well, I guess we just blame Kingpin.
All right, let's talk about Lenny gets the machine working in a pawn shop and a lot of things get sucked in. We get Hobgoblin once again gathering technology together, going to Kingpin's office, making him a deal as he has gotten the portal to work. He needs power, thus needs Kingpin's technology. Kingpin is very angry and really wants to know Hobgoblin's identity. So that's going to be something that we are going to need to watch out for and see if it pays off. At one point, we see Peter getting pulled in many directions while he is at a party. He is being accosted by Felicia, Jason Phillips, J. Jonah Jameson, Mary Jane, and Kingpin. We get Kingpin confronting Osborn, Spider-Man delivering in some inner monologue, and here comes Felicia. We get Norman interacting with himself as the Green Goblin in the mirror. This is a precursor to a lot of the scenes that we would see in the first Spider-Man with Willem Dafoe in the mirror as well. So just we get the Green Goblin and the Hobgoblin together, and chaos, of course, is going to ensue. But man, there's a lot going on with Spider-Man, and yeah, I just wish And I think part of the issue is that this is a cartoon and it's for kids. But I really would have loved to have seen them explore the idea of Peter Parker is in love with Mary Jane and Spider-Man is in love with Felicia. That's a really interesting idea to me.
Yeah, I wish they kind of pushed it a little more in season 4, obviously because no Mary Jane, she's out of the picture coming up. Spoiler alert, but they do push that idea, and I found that really interesting that they kind of like flat out said it like that, and I was like, okay, that's a really interesting concept. Like, I kind of see how it happens when eventually, some of these superheroes eventually have like kind of this dual personality disorder where they can't turn it on and off, and it's like you got that Superman kind of thing going on. You know what I mean? So Clark Kent, Superman. Am I in love with am I in love with Lois? Is Superman in love with Lois? That kind of thing. So I get that and how that can kind of stem from that. But I also want to point out that the party that they're at is Harry's birthday party, and the fact that they didn't want, or Peter didn't want to go. Mary Jane said, "Oh, we should go because he invited us. We should be his friends." And when they get there, they're totally blown off by Harry because like, they're only here because my dad made me invite you. So fuck off. And he walks away. And then they're just like, oh man, we should have just not come. And then they run into Felicia Hardy. And then they run into her new fiance, Jason. So all this shit going on. I just loved it, man, because it felt like one of those 80s comedies where shit is just hitting the fan over and over different times. So I like that concept because I was laughing, man, like just straight up, like Harry just fucking blew them off. And I was like, oh shit. That was hilarious because he was pissed. And he still blames Peter for stealing. He says he stole her, and I'm just like, oh, don't say that, man, because now you're kind of losing your case here. But I thought that whole interaction at the party was really interesting. Just human stuff, just the human stuff in a superhero show could be really interesting sometimes, and that was definitely one of them.
Absolutely. We get Spider-Man trapped at the bottom of the ocean because of the battle of the goblins. Hobgoblin and Green Goblin take turns yelling at each other. I like the fact that they are both calling each other fake goblins and that they are, in fact, the real ones. I found that to be tremendously amusing. We get Felicia in a library discovering a trap door. She finds a hobgoblin cape, and we have the payoff to the identity of who he is as Hobgoblin unmasks and identifies himself as Jason Phillips. All I can say, Mr. Phillips, you did a very poor job of hiding your identity by literally just having a hollow book and thinking that somebody would be dumb enough. It's kind of a strange payoff. I think it works plausibly because Felicia is a pretty intelligent person, and like, what are the odds that she would actually go into this library and kind of explore as much as she had? But when that cape fell, I definitely had a good laugh.
To me, it's just like, because he goes on to explain that crime paid for everything, right? Crime made me rich. Crime made me the person I am. I owe everything to crime. Yet she didn't have like any idea of his background of how he got his money or anything. And I don't know. It's just kind of weird. Like, how did you not know where this guy got his money from and all this shit? You just kind of, oh, he's got money. Okay, that's it. And then just accept it. So I thought that was kind of weird. But at the same time, that kind of ties into the fact maybe that he thinks that she's so naive that she wouldn't pick up on it, kind of thing. Maybe that's why he had his suit just kind of laying out there easy to find, because maybe he thought, she's not smart enough to find it. You know what I mean? And maybe he thought, less of her, kind of thing, and just didn't think she was as smart as she was and kind of underestimated her. So that's kind of the vibe I got. And then once she finds out, she realized, oh my God, again, what am I doing? This is like the third guy that has like totally turned as a villain on me. So, and then the whole thing comes up like, oh, I'm cursed. Well, I'm a black cat and all that shit. But I thought it was really good, man, because again, it's kind of furthering her storyline. It kind of puts a bookend to this Hobgoblin thing, because now we're down to one goblin, thank God. And power to Mark Hamill for doing the voice, trying to do a young 20-year-old voice, but yeah, it's clear like he was trying to do more. I don't know. It sounded more Jokerish, which kind of, I don't know. Maybe that's just me kind of being picky, but it kind of hinders the Goblin performance a little bit for me. And I kind of mentioned that before when he came in the earlier episodes, but that's just kind of my take on it. I just feel like it's just too much like the Joker, and it's not its own significant kind of thing, especially when you got another Goblin out there sounding very similar. So I felt like they kind of wasted Mark Hamill a little bit. I wish maybe he should have just been Norman Osborn instead of the other guy they picked and just have him be the Green Goblin, but that's just me.
So Green Goblin captures both Hobgoblin and Felicia, ties them up, threatens to dip them into chemicals, as is wont for so many of these. Another kind of trope that you would see in like 1966 Batman. Hell, you saw it in freaking Who Framed Roger Rabbit as well. So there's that kind of amusement to it. Spider-Man makes the save in time, destroys the time dilator seemingly. Green Goblin does get it to work and eventually goes through. Jason is a gaslighting asshole who apparently never really loved Felicia, Brian. It's a shame that love just is not going to ever be found on this show, it seems. And she refers to herself as a black cat. She may as well have screamed this out with how subtle it was. We get Green Goblin monologuing at the end of the episode. Yeah, this is definitely my favorite episode of the series. Yeah, I'll say the season, maybe not the series. We can come back to this question, but this is definitely a very strong episode. And some really good payoffs, finding out who the Hobgoblin is, kind of the tragedy with so many of the characters, exploration of Mary Jane and Peter Parker's relationship as well. This was very, very solid.
Yeah, top tier for sure. One of the better episodes of this the whole series. The whole series, I should say. I just couldn't believe that they had so many like adult things going on, and of course, when I watched this as a kid, I just didn't really pick up on things like the gaslighting and like I never really loved you and pretending to be in love with someone. That whole idea, just like, and how that's become like, that's a Hollywood trope, and you see that in, like Hitchcock movies and all those old movies where it's like, do you trust this new guy who's really trying to get after the money? You know what I mean? And that kind of thing. So I get it. And I that had an old school Hollywood feel to it as well. So I enjoyed that. But that's just me because I watch old school Hollywood movies and they have those tropes all the time. So I dig that. And of course, I'm a big Felicia Hardy mark. So you know me, man. I'm excited for season 4 because she gets to be the Black Cat and gets to, have some interesting conversations with her mother. I'll say that. And yeah, I'm glad they kind of built that up because like I said, I really am, like, I think at the end of the show, it should have been Felicia Hardy and Peter Parker hooking up by the end. But of course, they leave it as, Mary Jane is the lost love. But yeah, I'm really high on Felicia Hardy.
All right. This leads us to the big finale, turning point. Spider-Man tells Madam Web at the end he wants to end the relationship. And I think he is totally justified in wanting to do this because she never answers his questions, is never straight with him. So yeah, of course, I don't blame Spider-Man at all. He is absolutely in the right here. We got Osborn behaving like he has multiple personalities. He has fixed the time dilator to get it to do what he wants. Green Goblin knocks over a random truck just to draw the attention of Spider-Man. This clearly seems like a trap, Brian, and yet Spider-Man doesn't realize it.
Well, I didn't initially realize it at first either, but then once the first few seconds start rolling, it's like, oh shit, I think he got him. It's a trap, and yep, it's a trap.
It's a trap!
It's a trap! I just couldn't believe he fixed the fucking time dilator because it seemed like that shit was like dead, like broken. And somehow he went into the portal, fixed it within the portal, and came out. But again, it's one of those mysteries and those things they never explain. But very convenient, I'm going to say. Just very convenient that he went into a dying portal and came out totally rejuvenated with a whole new gun, fucking Rick and Morty style. But it is what it is.
So there really isn't a lot of plot in this episode, I would say. So much of this is a lot of chasing going on with the Green Goblin. He even manages to capture Mary Jane at one point. And I think because of the theme of the second half of the season especially has been Peter Parker and Mary Jane, we've really gotten a lot more focus on that relationship. So that is definitely something that I enjoyed tremendously. Just to see this payoff. I think one of the things that I thought we were going to get a much bigger payoff to what was going on with Kingpin. It really seemed like we were going to get sort of a climax to that situation, but we didn't. So I have to assume that's coming next year. But it was really strange to me that we did not get anything involving Kingpin in this episode.
Yeah, I'm glad they did that because it's all focused on the Goblin. I really appreciate that because then again, it would have been too much and cramming too much and jumping back and forth. But because it seems Kingpin is going to be that, that one constant villain throughout the whole show, and it seems like they're going to stick with that for the next couple seasons, closing out the show. So I'm glad they did that, kind of like just not focus on him because he's definitely going to come back, and give all the focus to Osborn and this entire story, and it kind of pays off at the end with the big shocking ending.
So I have to say, that the performance that is given at the end is unbelievable. This is the strongest voice work that has ever been on the show. You feel the anger of Spider-Man at the end of this episode in such a vicious way. Like, if you had told me that Spider-Man was going to straight up murder Green Goblin with how he was speaking, I would have 100% believed you. This is the best voice work that's been done on the show. And I mean, just to see that visceral anger, it was really shocking to me, because I don't think we haven't really seen this from Tom Holland. We saw it a little bit with Andrew Garfield, a little bit with Tobey Maguire, but we really saw just the angriest version of this character. And it's pretty amazing to see. And the fact that Mary Jane does go through, and like, Spider-Man is literally ready to murder Green Goblin, and he has a moment where it seems like he's going to actually do it. And then he decides, no, I need to do the right thing. I need to try to save Norman. He tries to save him. It doesn't work. And like, for a moment, it seems like, okay, he's not going to be angry. But then what happens? Madam Web continues to be a terrible mentor, Brian. Spider-Man, rightfully, really, really angry, and is angry at her for not helping, not offering any sort of answers. This is a huge cliffhanger as Mary Jane is sailing through a dimension. Spider-Man is questioning his choices. Here's the thing I'll say. Spider-Man being angry at Madam Web is completely justified.
Absolutely, man. This particular scene has haunted my subconscious, I think, for years since I saw it as a kid, because it was one of those things that was left unanswered, and they kind of leave it unanswered, unfortunately. We'll talk about that in the next coming weeks, but it's just haunting because the way it happens too, it's just so sudden. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so shocking and sudden the way they do it, because like usually in a moment like that in a movie, they'll stretch it out the way that they Gwen Stacy, right? They really stretched that moment out and slowed it down in Amazing Spider-Man 2 when she died. But in this case, it was just so sudden, to the fact that Spider-Man didn't even know what happened. Like, he thought he fell in the water, for crying out loud. He went and searched the water, and he was just like in this desperate panic mode. It was heartbreaking. And then all of a sudden, like, he realizes, oh shit, like, she went into a portal. And in that moment, man, oh my God, that was tremendous. One of the best Spider-Man moments ever, recorded, put the screen. Just an incredible moment. You said, like, the voice acting work by Christopher Daniel Barnes was amazing. You felt that, and in that moment, I kind of felt like, I always feel like it in this moment, just not necessarily like kill him, just like, I'm not going to help you, kind of like the Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins, because like, I get it, man. Just, yeah, in that moment, I probably would not have helped him and just let him just float through the portal, to be honest, and not try to help him at all. Because it was just such an incredible, powerful, sad, depressing moment. To this day, like, it's still haunting me, because spoiler alert, we never find out what happens to Mary Jane. She'll come back, but it's not the same Mary Jane. But man, it's so haunting the way that she is just traveling throughout, like, whatever dimension that is, and we never get back to that. Which is why the way they kind of end the last episode in season 5 kind of alludes to her. So I've always wanted, like, well, if they're ever going to bring the show back, they got to find Mary Jane. Like, that's the big thing. Like, after all these years, it's kind of like Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap. Like, he never gets to come home. Well, if you're going to bring Quantum Leap back, you better, goddamn it, bring him fucking home after 40 years. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like Incredible Hulk TV show. He never gets rid of the monster and has to live with it for the rest of his days until he dies. So that kind of, like, tragedy, you know what I mean? That kind of feeling that kind of haunts you. Some of these shows that haunted me as a kid because of these moments left undone. Like, it's just, what happened? What the hell's gonna happen? She's still floating in the dimension right now. So all that kind of thing, it's just so haunting. And the fact that she's screaming and she doesn't even know what's going on, it's crazy, man. And to do that in a kid's TV show, obviously they can't kill the characters. So the way they did this was just, I think it's even more just sticks in your head, because it's like this unknown factor to it behind it.
I'm very intrigued and excited to see what we have to look forward to in season 4 of the mid-90s Spider-Man. I think this was a good season. I don't know how I would rank it at this point, because I think season 3 has higher highs than season 2, but I think season 2 is more consistent. Like, season 3 to me has two straight up bad episodes, but I would also make the argument that episode 13 is really, really good. I would say the finale is really, really good. So there's a lot of good setup and payoff that's going on. We get a lot of exploration of the characters. We get a little bit more with Kingpin and Mary Jane and Felicia, and that's very much appreciated. So there's a lot of really good stuff across the board in these final 5 episodes, and I think that's where the strengths lie. It's just unfortunate that we had just 2 really, really, really bad clunkers. But next week we will start with season 4, episode 1, and review the first 3 episodes of that season. So you will have that to look forward to. But yeah, Brian, I would say season 3 is very good. Any final thoughts before we end this podcast?
I would still rank this as like the weaker of the first 3 seasons, only because that bottom half, or top half, I should say, was not that great up until the last 5 episodes. It kind of felt like they kind of put all their eggs in their baskets for the last 5 episodes. All the shockers, all the twists and turns and stuff. And as powerful as that moment was, as like one of those childhood moments, seeing Mary Jane go into the portal and not coming back out, it's still like, I felt like season 1 had a consistency to it. Season 3 didn't have that consistency until the portal stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at. I still think season 2 was incredible in terms of consistency and having a singular storyline carried throughout. So I think season 2 is still the stronger of the first 3.
Yeah, for sure. I would say so. So for Brian, my name is Jerome. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you again next week.
Where am I? Peter, somebody please help me. Help me.